Imagine a cold, misty night in Victorian London, the kind where the fog clings to the cobblestones like a living thing, swallowing every sound, every shadow. You're standing on a dimly lit platform, the distant whistle of a train echoing through the haze. The 9:15 express to Edinburgh is due any moment, its headlamp cutting through the gloom. You hear the rumble, feel the ground tremble, and then nothing. Silence. The fog swirls. But no train arrives. No whistle, no clatter of wheels, no passengers spilling onto the platform. It's as if the entire train, packed with people, has dissolved into the night. This isn't just a delay. This is a mystery. A train, hundreds of feet long, carrying dozens of souls, has vanished without a trace. How could something so massive disappear? And why? Welcome to Sherlock Holmes and the Train That Disappeared, where we unravel a case so baffling it could only draw the attention of the world's greatest detective. Buckle up, because this tale is going to twist through the shadows and you won't see the end coming. The year is 1891, and London is a city of secrets, where gas lamps flicker and whispers carry on the wind. Sherlock Holmes, the master of deduction, sits in his Baker Street flat, surrounded by a haze of pipe smoke and the clutter of his latest experiments. Dr. John Watson, ever the loyal friend, is scribbling notes by the fire when a sharp knock at the door breaks the silence. It's a telegram delivered by a breathless messenger boy, his cap askew from running through the rain-soaked streets. Holmes tears it open, his sharp eyes scanning the words. The message is from Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard, and it's urgent. Express train to Edinburgh missing. No trace at King's Cross or beyond. Need your help. Come at once. Watson glances at Holmes, expecting a quip or a dismissive wave. But the detective's face is grim, his fingers already reaching for his coat. A missing train, not delayed, not derailed, but gone carriages, engine, passengers. All swallowed by the night. The stakes are high, and the mystery is unlike anything they've faced before. Holmes and Watson waste no time. They hail a hansom, cab, the horses' hoofs clattering through London's fog-choked streets as they head to King's Cross Stat. Iron. The platform is eerily quiet when they arrive, save for the murmur of confused railway staff and a handful of anxious passengers. Waiting for a train that never came, Lestrade meets them, his face pale, his usual bluster replaced by unease. He explains the facts, or rather the lack of them. The 9:15 express, carrying 73 passengers and a crew of 6, left King's Cross on schedule. It was last reported passing a signal box 10 miles north, but after that, nothing. No wreckage, no distress signals, no sign of the train at its next stop. It's as if the earth opened up and swallowed it whole. Holmes paces the platform, his eyes darting from the tracks to the timetable board, his mind already slicing through the impossible. A train does not simply vanish, Lestrade, he says, his voice low but sharp. There is always a trace. We just haven't found it yet. Watson, ever practical, asks about the passengers. Lestrade hands over a manifest, a mix of merchants, families, and a few notable names, including a reclusive scientist, Dr. Elias Morrow, known for his work on experimental machinery. Could he be connected? Holmes doesn't speculate, not yet. Instead, he kneels by the tracks, his magnifying glass catching the glint of a gas lamp as he examines the gravel and steel. A faint scratch on a rail catches his eye, barely visible, but to Holmes it's a whisper of a clue. Something interrupted this train's journey, he murmurs, but not here. The mystery deepens, and the fog seems to thicken around them as if guarding its secrets. Watson shivers, not just from the cold. What could make an entire train disappear? Was it sabotage, an accident, or something for stranger? As Holmes rises, brushing dust from his coat, He turns to Lestrade. "We need to visit that signal box, 10 miles north. If the train passed there, someone or something saw it last." The trio prepares to leave, but the weight of the mystery lingers. A train doesn't vanish without reason, and Holmes knows the answer lies in the details others overlook. For now, the trail is cold, but the game is afoot. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where we follow Holmes to the signal box and uncover a clue that changes everything. If you're hooked on this mystery, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The hansom cab rattles along the uneven road, carrying Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade away from the bustling chaos of King's Cross into the quiet, fog-draped countryside. The air grows colder, the night darker as they approach the lonely signal box 10 miles north, the last place the missing train was reported. Holmes sits in silence, his sharp eyes fixed on some invisible point, his mind churning through possibilities. Watson, clutching his notebook, feels the weight of the unknown pressing in. A train doesn't vanish not without leaving something behind. Lestrade fidgets, muttering about the impossibility of it all, but Holmes cuts him off with a raised hand. "Impossibilities are merely facts we haven't yet explained," he says, his voice steady but laced with an edge of intrigue. The cab slows, and the signal box looms ahead, a small, weathered structure perched beside the tracks, its single lantern casting a feeble glow against the fog. They step out, the crunch of gravel underfoot the only sound in the stillness. The signalman, a weary man named Thomas Grimsby, greets them with a nervous nod. His face is pale, his hands trembling as he leads them inside the cramped box, where levers and dials gleam faintly in the lamplight. Grimsby recounts the night's events, his voice shaky. The 9:15 express passed through at 9:27, right on schedule. He saw the engine's headlamp, heard the whistle, and logged its passage before raising the signal to clear the line. Nothing seemed amiss until the next station, 20 miles north, reported no sign of the train. Holmes listens intently, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering on a smudged logbook and a half-empty tea mug. "Did you notice anything unusual?" he asks. Grimsby hesitates, then mentions a strange sound, a low, mechanical hum, unlike any train he'd ever heard. Just after the express passed, it faded into the fog, and he thought nothing of it until now. Holmes steps outside, his coat billowing as he examines the tracks near the signal box. The fog is thicker here, curling around the rails like ghostly fingers. He kneels, his magnifying glass glinting as he studies the ground. Watson watches, knowing that Holmes has found something. A faint set of marks, not quite footprints, scuff the gravel near the tracks. They're irregular, almost mechanical, as if something heavy and metallic dragged across the stones. Not a derailment, Holmes murmurs, but an invention. Watson frowns, puzzled, but Holmes doesn't elaborate. Instead, he questions Grimsby further, pressing for details about the passengers or any unusual activity in the days prior. Grimsby recalls a stranger lingering near the tracks a week ago, a man in a dark coat who asked odd questions about train schedules and signal operations. He vanished before Grimsby could press him further. The clue deepens the mystery. Was this stranger connected to the train's disappearance? And what of that mechanical hum Grimsby heard? Holmes's eyes narrow, his mind piecing together fragments of a puzzle no one else can see. Lestrade, impatient, urges them to move on, but Holmes insists on one more sweep of the area. Near the edge of the signal box's light, Watson spots something glinting in the grass, a small brass cog, no bigger than a shilling. Its edge is worn but precise. Holmes pockets it without a word, though his expression betrays a flicker of excitement. "This," he says softly, "is no ordinary railway part. The night grows colder, and the fog seems to whisper secrets just out of reach. Holmes turns to his companions. We need to trace this train's path further. The next station may hold answers or more questions. The trio heads back to the cab, the signal box fading into the mist behind them, the brass cog, the mysterious hum. The stranger in the dark coat their pieces of a puzzle that's growing darker by the minute. What happened to the 9:15 express? Was it stolen, sabotaged, or something stranger still? Stick with us for Chapter 3, where Holmes follows the trail to the next station and uncovers a discovery that turns the case upside down. If you're gripped by this mystery, smash that like button and subscribe to keep unraveling the truth with us. The hansom cab lurches through the night, its wheels grinding against the rough country road as Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade press deeper into the mystery of the vanished 9:15 express. The fog clings to the landscape, wrapping trees and hedgerows in a ghostly shroud, and the air carries a damp chill that seeps into their bones. Holmes sits forward, his sharp features taut with focus, clutching the brass cork he found near the signal box. Its intricate design, too precise for a common railway part, gnaws at his mind. A tiny clue whispering of something larger, something sinister. Watson, scribbling notes by the dim light of a lantern, feels the weight of the unknown pressing harder. A train doesn't vanish, he tells himself, yet the facts defy reason. Lestrade, restless beside them, mutters about the impossibility of it all. But Holmes remains silent, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Their destination is the next station along the line, a small outpost called Harrow's End, where the train was expected but never arrived. If answers lie anywhere, Holmes believes they're hidden there, in the shadows of a place forgotten by time. Harrow's End station appears through the fog like a spectre, its wooden platform weathered and sagging, its single ticket office boarded up. The station hasn't seen regular service in years, used only as a passing point for express trains barreling toward Edinburgh. The cab halts, and a trio steps onto the platform, their boots echoing in the stillness. The air feels heavy, as if the fog itself is holding its breath. A single gas lamp flickers above the platform, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to move of their own accord. Watson's hand drifts to the revolver in his coat pocket, a reflex from his army days. Lestrade, usually brash, is subdued, his eyes darting to the dark edges of the station. Holmes, however, is undeterred, his movements precise as he scans the scene. If the train passed the signal box, he says, his voice cutting through the silence, it should have reached here within 20 minutes. Yet it didn't. Something happened between those points. They begin their search, the fog muffling their footsteps. Holmes moves to the tracks, his magnifying glass catching the faint glow of the lamp as he examines the rails. The gravel is disturbed in places, not by the orderly passage of a train, but by something chaotic scattered stones, faint gouges in the earth, as if something heavy was dragged or shifted. Watson notices a faint smell, acrid and metallic, lingering in the air. Oil, he ventures. But Holmes shakes his head. Not quite. Something more chemical. Near the platform's edge, Holmes finds another clue, a scrap of fabric, dark and coarse, caught on a splintered board. He holds it up, studying its texture. This isn't from a passenger's coat, he murmurs. It's too rough, too utilitarian. Perhaps a worker or someone who didn't want to be seen. The station master's office, though abandoned, offers more questions than answers. Lestrade forces the door open, revealing a dusty room filled with cobwebs and forgotten ledgers. A cracked window lets in a draught, and papers litter the floor, yellowed with age. Holmes sifts through them, his fingers swift but careful. Most are old timetables, but one document catches his eye, a handwritten note, barely legible, tucked Inside a ledger, it reads Morrow's device, track 7, midnight. The name Morrow sends a jolt through Watson. Dr. Elias Morrow, the reclusive scientist on the passenger manifest, known for his work on experimental machinery. Could this be connected to the brass cog? Holmes pockets the note, his expression unreadable. But Watson knows that his friend is piecing together a theory, one he's not yet ready to share. As they step back onto the platform, a low sound cuts through the fog, a faint, rhythmic clanking like metal striking metal, coming from the direction of the tracks. Watson freezes, his grip tightening on his revolver. Lestrade's hand goes to his truncheon, his face pale. Holmes, however, moves toward the sound, his steps deliberate. Stay close. He whispers, his voice calm but commanding. The clanking grows louder, then stops abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. They reach the edge of the platform where the tracks vanish into the fog. Holmes kneels, his lantern revealing a startling discovery. A section of rail is misaligned, its bolts loosened as if tampered with. Nearby, a strange mark is etched into the gravel, a perfect circle 3 feet across, with faint grooves radiating outward like the imprint of some massive mechanical wheel. This is no accident, Holmes says, his voice low. This was planned. The fog clings to the countryside like a shroud as Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade trek along the railway line, their lanterns casting feeble beams into the murky darkness. The tampered rail and strange circular mark at Harrow's end station linger in Watson's mind, each clue deepening the mystery of the vanished 9:15 express. Holmes leads the way, his long strides purposeful, his eyes scanning the ground for any trace of the missing train. The brass cogs in his pocket small, precise, and out of place seem to weigh heavier with every step, hinting at a purpose. Beyond ordinary machinery, Lestrade, trailing behind, grumbles about the cold and the futility of searching in such conditions, but Holmes ignores him, his focus unbreakable. The tracks stretch into the night, a steel lifeline that should have carried the train to safety, but instead led it to oblivion. Watson's heart pounds, not just from the chill, but from the growing sense that they're walking into something far larger and more dangerous than a simple derailment. The trio follows the line for nearly a mile, the fog muffling their footsteps and turning every rustle into a potential threat. Holmes pauses occasionally, kneeling to inspect the gravel or running his fingers along the rails, searching for signs of disturbance. The air carries that same acrid, chemical scent Watson noticed at the station, stronger now, almost oppressive. It's not oil, Holmes mutters, half to himself, but something synthetic, industrial. Watson, ever the practical one, suggests it could be from the train's engine, but Holmes shakes his head. No engine leaves a scent like this. It's deliberate, a byproduct of something experimental. The word hangs in the air, tying back to Dr. Elias Morrow, the scientist on the passenger manifest whose name keeps surfacing. Could his mysterious device be the key to the train's disappearance? They reach a bend in the tracks where the line curves through a dense copse of trees, their gnarled branches looming like skeletal hands in the fog. Holmes stops abruptly, raising a hand for silence. A faint sound, a soft crunch of gravel comes from the shadows ahead. Watson's hand instinctively moves to his revolver, his pulse quickening. Lestrade, startled, fumbles with his lantern, nearly dropping it. Holmes, calm as ever, lowers his own light and steps forward, his silhouette blending with the mist. "Show yourself," he calls, his voice sharp but controlled. For a moment, there's only silence. Then a figure emerges from the trees, a man, tall and gaunt, dressed in a dark coat that seems to absorb the light. His face is half hidden by a scarf, but his eyes glint with a mix of fear and defiance. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Holmes demands, his tone cutting. Through the fog, the man hesitates, his hands twitching as if debating whether to flee. Lestrade steps forward, brandishing his truncheon, but Holmes motions him back. Let him speak. The man's voice, when it comes, is low and hoarse, tinged with an accent Watson can't quite place. I meant no harm, he says. I saw something. Last night, near the tracks. He glances nervously at the rails, as if expecting the train to materialize. Holmes's eyes narrow, sensing a thread of truth. What did you see? He presses. The man swallows, then describes a strange sight. A massive shape, not quite a train, moving slowly along the tracks in the fog. It was silent, he says, except for a low hum, like the one the signalman reported. It wasn't right, he mutters. Too big, too wrong. Watson exchanges a glance with Lestrade, both unsettled by the man's words. Holmes, however, is relentless, stepping closer to the stranger. Describe it, he says, his voice almost a whisper. The man fumbles, mentioning a hulking silhouette, angular and metallic, with faint lights pulsing along its side. It vanished into the fog, he claims, and he fled, fearing he'd seen something he wasn't meant to. Holmes presses for more details. Where? Exactly? What time? Any markings? But the man grows agitated, backing away. I've said too much, he mutters, and before Lestrade can stop him, he bolts into the trees, the fog swallowing him as completely as it did the train. Holmes doesn't pursue, though Watson can see the calculation in his eyes. He knows. More than he's telling, Holmes says, his voice low. But his fear was genuine. Whatever he saw, it wasn't a train. Lestrade scoffs, insisting the man was a vagrant spinning tales. But Holmes ignores him, returning to the spot where the stranger emerged. There, in the soft earth, he finds fresh footprints, boots. Well, the quarry yawns before Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade. Its jagged walls swallowed by a fog so thick it feels like a living thing, pressing against their skin. The faint hum they heard moments ago lingers in the air, a low, unnatural pulse that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Holmes holds his lantern high, its light barely piercing the gloom, revealing the rusted tracks of the old siding that disappear into the quarry's depths. The metallic tube he found etched with intricate patterns, and unmistakably linked to Dr. Elias Morrow's work, sits heavy in his pocket, alongside the brass cogs. Each clue points to something extraordinary, something that defies the logic of a simple train robbery or derailment. Watson's grip on his revolver is tight, his soldier's instinct screaming that they're not alone. Lestrade, usually quick to dismiss Holmes's theories, is silent, his eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting them to move. The chemical scent is stronger here, sharp and biting, like nothing Watson has encountered before. This place, Holmes says, his voice low and steady, is where the train's trail ends or begins. They follow the siding tracks, the gravel crunching under their boots, each step echoing in the cavernous quarry. The walls rise high above, scarred from years of excavation, and the air grows colder, heavier as they descend. Holmes moves with purpose, his lantern sweeping the ground for signs of disturbance. The tracks are old, rusted in places, but there are fresh marks gouged in the earth, patches of gravel swept aside, as if something massive passed through recently. Watson notices a faint shimmer on the ground, like oil, but thicker, almost viscous. He points it out, and Holmes kneels, dipping his fingers into the substance. Not oil, he says, rubbing it between his fingers. A lubricant, perhaps, but for something far more advanced than a locomotive. His eyes gleam with that familiar spark of discovery, but there's a tension in his voice, a hint that even he is unsettled by what they're uncovering. The hum grows louder as they venture deeper, a rhythmic thump that vibrates in their chests. It's not the sound of a train, Watson realizes, but something mechanical, alien. The tracks lead to a wide clearing in the quarry, where the fog thins just enough to reveal a startling sight. A massive, circular indentation in the ground nearly 20 feet across, its edges scored with precise, mechanical grooves. It's like the smaller mark they found at Harrow's End, but far larger, as if a colossal machine had rested here. Holmes circles the indentation, his lantern casting eerie shadows across its surface. This, he says, his voice almost a whisper, is no railway equipment. This is something else entirely. Lestrade, unnerved, suggests it could be a natural formation, but Holmes scoffs. Nature doesn't carve gears into stone, Inspector. Watson steps closer, his lantern revealing faint scorch marks radiating from the circle, as if something intensely hot had touched down. Nearby, he spots another clue, a fragment of metal, twisted and blackened, half buried in the dirt. Holmes examines it, turning it over in his hands. It's lightweight, almost unnaturally so, and its surfaces etched with the same intricate patterns as the tube. An alloy, Holmes murmurs, stronger than steel, yet lighter. This is Morrow's work, I'm certain of it. The mention of Dr. Morrow sends a chill through Watson. The scientist's name keeps surfacing, tied to every clue. The note. At Harrow's End, the cogs, the tube, and now this fragment. Was he a victim of the train's disappearance, or its architect? The hum suddenly spikes, a sharp, grating sound that makes Watson flinch. It's coming from deeper in the quarry, where the tracks end at a collapsed tunnel, its entrance blocked by rubble. Holmes approaches, his lantern revealing fresh signs of disturbance, loose stones scattered, as if recently moved, and more of that viscous lubricant pooling near the entrance. Someone or something has been here, he says, his eyes narrowing. He runs his fingers along the rubble, then pauses, his hand freezing on a stone. Beneath it, partially hidden, is a small, leather-bound notebook, its pages weathered but intact. Holmes opens it carefully, his lantern illuminating cramped, hurried handwriting. The pages are filled with diagrams, complex schematics of gears, pistons, and something that looks like a massive, cylindrical machine. Scrawled across one page is a single word, Transatron. Watson peers over Holmes's shoulder, his heart racing. Transatron. What does it mean? Holmes doesn't answer immediately, his eyes scanning the diagrams with fierce intensity. It's a name, he says finally, for a device capable of things we can barely comprehend. Morrow was no ordinary scientist. His work pushed beyond steam, beyond electricity into realms of energy manipulation. Lestrade, skeptical but shaken, demands to know how a scientist's notebook explains a missing train. Holmes's response is curt, it doesn't yet, but it confirms we're dealing with a machine. One that could move or conceal something as large as a train. Before they can dig further, a sharp crack echoes through the quarry, like a branch snapping underfoot. Watson spins, his revolver raised, scanning the fog. The hum has stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that feels alive with menace. Holmes motions for quiet, his eyes darting to the shadows. We're not alone. He whispers, Lestrade grips his truncheon, his bravado crumbling. The trio moves back to back, their lanterns casting jittery beams across the quarry walls. Another sound of metallic scrape, deliberate and close. Watson's pulse pounds in his ears. Is it the man from the shadows, the one who fled, or something? Worse, something tied to the Transatron. Holmes, undaunted, steps toward the sound, his lantern raised. Show yourself, he calls, his voice echoing off the stone. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, from the fog, a shape emerges, not a man, but a glint of metal low to the ground, moving with an unnatural, scuttling motion. It's gone before they can focus, vanishing into the rubble. Watson's breath catches. What in God's name was that? He mutters. Holmes's expression is grim. A guardian, perhaps, he says, or a prototype. Whatever it was, it's protecting something. He glances at the notebook, then at the collapsed tunnel. The answers are in there, he says, nodding toward the rubble. We need to get inside. The quarry feels like a trap now. Its walls, closing in, the fog hiding unseen threats. Holmes pockets the notebook, his mind racing. The Transatron, the cogs, the strange machine in the fog, what did Morrow create? And why did it lead to the train's disappearance? Was it a test, a theft, or something more sinister? The trio prepares to clear the rubble. But the sense of being watched grows stronger, the shadows deeper. Holmes's resolve is unshaken. But Watson feels the weight of the unknown pressing down. They're close to a breakthrough, but at what cost? The mystery is unraveling, but the danger is only beginning. What lies beyond the collapsed tunnel, and what does the Transatron do? Stay with us for Chapter 6, where Holmes uncovers a hidden chamber and a truth that defies belief. If you're gripped by this chilling tale, hit that like button, subscribe. The quarry's oppressive silence wraps around Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade as they stand before the collapsed tunnel. Its rubble-strewn entrance a barrier to the secrets beyond. The fleeting glimpse of that scuttling, metallic shape in the fog lingers in Watson's mind, its unnatural movement sending a shiver down his spine. The air is thick with the acrid, chemical scent, and the faint hum they heard earlier has vanished, leaving an eerie stillness that feels like the calm before a storm. Holmes, clutching the leather-bound notebook filled with Dr. Elias Morrow's cryptic schematics, studies the rubble with a predator's focus. The word Transatron echoes in his thoughts, a name tied to a machine capable of the impossible. Watson, his revolver still in hand, scans the fog for any sign of that strange, mechanical thing, while Lestrade, pale and uneasy, grips his truncheon as if it could protect him from whatever lurks in the shadows. We need to get inside, Holmes says, his voice steady but urgent. The answers to the train's disappearance are behind this wall. They set to work, moving stones with careful precision. Holmes directs them, his eyes catching details in the rubble scratches on the rocks, traces of that same viscous lubricant they found earlier, and faint scorch marks that suggest intense heat. The stones are heavy, some unnaturally smooth as if polished by something other than nature. Watson's muscles strain as he heaves a boulder aside, revealing a narrow gap in the tunnel's entrance. A draught of cold air seeps out, carrying a stronger whiff of that chemical tang. Holmes peers into the darkness, his lantern casting a thin beam that reveals a smooth, metallic surface just beyond the rubble, not the rough stone of a quarry tunnel, but something man-made, deliberate. This is no ordinary collapse, he murmurs, his fingers tracing the edge of a steel panel hidden among the rocks. This was sealed intentionally. With renewed effort, they clear enough debris to squeeze through the gap. Holmes goes first, his lantern illuminating a tunnel that descends sharply, its walls lined with sleek, metallic plating unlike anything Watson has seen in a railway or mine. The air grows colder, the hum returning faintly, vibrating through the floor. Lestrade hesitates, muttering about the folly of venturing into the unknown. But Holmes's sharp glance silences him. If you want answers, Inspector, follow me, or stay here and explain to Scotland Yard why you abandoned the case. Lestrade grumbles but follows, and Watson, loyal as ever, stays close, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The tunnel twists downward, opening into a vast, subterranean chamber that stops them in their tracks. The chamber is enormous, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with strange, humming panels that pulse with faint, bluish light. At its center sits a colossal machine, a labyrinth of gears, pistons, and glowing conduits. Its design both intricate and alien. It's larger than a locomotive. It's surface-etched with the same patterns as the brass cogs and metallic tube in Holmes's pocket. The Transatron, Watson realizes, his breath-catching. This must be it, Morrow's creation. The machine is silent now, but its presence is overwhelming. Like a sleeping giant. Scattered around it are crates, tools, and papers, some bearing the same hurried handwriting as the notebook. Holmes moves forward, his lantern sweeping the scene, his eyes alight with fascination. This, he says softly, is no mere invention. This is a revolution. Watson steps closer, noticing details that deepen the mystery. A section of railway track, identical to those outside, runs through the chamber, ending abruptly at the machine. Nearby, a massive hatch in the floor yawns open, its edges scorched and slick with lubricant. Holmes kneels beside it, his fingers tracing deep grooves in the metal, as if something enormous was dragged through. The train, he says, his voice taut with realization. It was brought here. But how and where is it now? Lestrade, overwhelmed, stammers that no machine could move an entire train underground. But Holmes points to the hatch. This device didn't move the train in the conventional sense. It displaced it. The word hangs heavy in the air. Watson's mind reels displaced. To where? He recalls the schematics in Morrow's notebook, the diagrams of energy fields and propulsion systems far beyond steam or coal. Could the Transatron manipulate space itself? Holmes sifts through the papers scattered near the machine, finding more clues. A manifest matching the 9:15 express, a map with strange, concentric markings, and a letter addressed to Morrow from an unknown correspondent. The letter is cryptic, mentioning the final test and a new frontier, with a warning the investors must not know. Holmes's eyes narrow. Morrow had partners. He says, someone funded this and they wanted it secret. As they search, a sudden clatter echoes from the shadows, a metallic clang, sharp and deliberate. Watson spins, his revolver raised, the beam of his lantern cutting through the gloom. The sound came from a corner of the chamber, where crates are stacked high. Holmes motions for silence, creeping toward the noise, his movements cat-like. Behind a crate, they find a small, mechanical device barely larger than a bread box, with spindly legs and a gleaming, lens-like eye. It scuttles back, its movements eerily precise. Before vanishing into a crevice, a sentinel, Holmes says, his voice low, Morrow's design. No doubt. It's watching us. Watson's skin crawls. The thing they saw in the quarry wasn't a stray machine, it was guarding this place. The discovery raises the stakes. If the Transatron displaced the train, where did it go? And why are there sentinels protecting this chamber? Was Morrow working alone, or is someone else pulling the strings? Holmes pockets the letter and a handful of papers, his mind racing. We need to understand this machine, he says, its purpose, its capabilities. If it can move a train, it can move other things, perhaps even people. The implications are staggering, and Watson feels the weight of a conspiracy far larger than a single missing train. The chamber feels alive now, its panels humming softly. As if the Transatron is waking. They prepare to leave, but not before Holmes notices one final clue, a faint inscription on the machine's base, barely visible in the lantern's light. It reads, to cross the veil. The words send a chill through Watson. A veil. Between what? Holmes's expression is unreadable, but his eyes burn with determination. We're close, he says. But we're not safe. Whoever built this will go to great length. The fog-laden night presses against Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade as they emerge from the quarry's hidden chamber, their minds reeling from the discovery of the Transatron. the strange machine with its glowing conduits and cryptic inscription to cross the veil looms in their thoughts, a mechanical enigma tied to the vanished 9:15 express. Holmes clutches the papers he took from the chamber, Morrow's schematics, the cryptic letter and the manifest of the missing train. The small, mechanical sentinel they glimpsed scuttling in the shadows only deepens the unease. Watson's hand rests on his revolver, his eyes scanning the fog for any sign of those eerie, lens-like eyes. Lestrade, shaken but trying to mask it, insists they report to Scotland Yard, but Holmes dismisses the idea with a wave. The answers aren't in bureaucratic reports, Inspector, he says, his voice sharp. They're in London with the men who funded Morrow's work. The trio climbs into their waiting cab, the horse snorting nervously as they head back to the city, the quarry's secrets trailing them like ghosts. The journey to London is tense, the cab rattling through the misty countryside as Holmes paws. Over the stolen papers by lantern light, the letter, addressed to Dr. Elias Morrow, mentions investors and a final test, but no names, only a meeting place, the Black Raven, a nondescript pub in London's East End known for its shadowy clientele. Watson, scribbling notes, feels the weight of the mystery growing heavier. A machine that could displace an entire train, investors hiding in the underbelly of the city, and what did cross the veil mean? He glances at Holmes, whose face is a mask of concentration, his fingers tracing the intricate diagrams of the Transatron. Morrow's work required resources, Holmes says, almost to himself. Money, materials, secrecy. Someone powerful is behind this, and they're in London. They arrive in the East End as dawn begins to break, the fog thinning to reveal grimy streets and flickering gas lamps. The Black Raven is a squat, soot-stained building tucked between a pawnshop and a warehouse, its windows dark and uninviting. Inside, the air is thick with tobacco smoke and the murmur of rough voices. The patrons, dock workers, petty thieves, and men with eyes that linger to long fall silent as Holmes, Watson, and Lestrade enter. Holmes, undaunted, scans the room, his gaze settling on a man in the corner, half hidden in shadow. He's older, with a neatly trimmed beard and a tailored coat that seems out of place in the pub's grime. His fingers tap nervously on a glass of ale, and his eyes dart toward the door as if expecting trouble. Holmes approaches, his movements calm but deliberate, like a predator closing in. You're expecting someone, Holmes says, sliding into the chair opposite the man. It's not a question. The man startles, his hand jerking toward his pocket before he catches himself. I don't know you, he mutters, his voice low with a faint tremor. Holmes leans forward, his eyes piercing. But you knew Dr. Elias Morrow, and you know something about the 9:15 express to Edinburgh. The man's face pales, his fingers tightening around his glass. Watson, standing behind Holmes, notices the man's coat dark, coarse, like the scrap of fabric they found at Harrow's End. Could this be the stranger the signalman saw? Lestrade, hovering nearby, looks ready to intervene, but Holmes's raised hand keeps him at bay. The man, who introduces himself as Henry Caldwell, claims to be a former colleague of Morrow's, a chemist who worked on early experiments with energy conduction. His story is halting, nervous. Morrow was brilliant but obsessive, chasing ideas that bordered on madness. The Transatron, he says, was meant to harness a new kind of energy, one that could bend the rules of physics. He spoke of moving things, objects, people across distances instantly, Caldwell says, his voice barely above a whisper. But it was unstable, dangerous. Watson's pulse quickens. Instant movement? It sounds impossible, yet it explains the train's disappearance. No wreckage, no trace. Holmes presses Caldwell for more, asking about the investors, but the man grows cagey, glancing at the door, They're powerful, he says. Men who don't like questions. I only helped with the chemistry, nothing more. Before Holmes can push further, a loud crash interrupts them, a glass shattering near the bar. The patrons turn, and in the chaos, Caldwell slips toward the back door. Holmes is on his feet in an instant, but the man is fast, disappearing into the alley behind the pub. Watson and Lestrade give chase, their boots pounding on the cobblestones, but the fog swallows Caldwell as completely as it did the train. They return to find Holmes standing at the table, holding a crumpled note Caldwell left behind. It's a single line, scrawled in haste, "The warehouse on Cutler Street, midnight." Holmes's eyes gleam with anticipation. Our friend was more involved than he let on, he says, and he's running from someone or something. They head to Cutler Street, a grim stretch of warehouses near the docks where the air smells of tar and rotting fish. The warehouse in question is a hulking structure, its windows boarded, its doors chained. But Holmes notices a faint light flickering inside, and the now familiar chemical scent lingers in the air. He picks the lock with practiced ease, and they slip inside, their lanterns casting long shadows across crates and dusty machinery. In the center of the warehouse stands a smaller version of the Transatron's components, gears, conduits, and a glowing panel. Humming softly, scattered around it are papers, blueprints, and a photograph of Morrow with two other men, their faces stern, their attire suggesting wealth and influence. The investors, Holmes murmurs, pocketing the photo dot as they examine the setup. A faint scuttling sound echoes from the shadows, the same mechanical clatter they heard in the quarry. Watson raises his revolver, his heart pounding. A sentinel, like the one in the chamber, emerges briefly, its lens-like eye glinting before. It darts behind a crate. Holmes doesn't flinch, but his voice is tense. "We're close," he says. "Too close." The hum from the machine grows louder, and a sudden spark of blue light arcs across the panel, illuminating a strange singular circle with radiating lines, like the marks they found on the tracks. Watson's blood runs cold. This isn't just a machine, it's active, alive, and they're standing in its heart. The warehouse feels like a trap now, its shadows hiding more than just sentinels. Who were Morrow's investors? And what did they want with the Transatron? Was the trains disappearance a test, a theft, or something far worse? Holmes gathers the blueprints, his mind racing to connect the dots. "We need to find Caldwell," he says. He knows where the train is and who's behind this. But as they turn to leave, a heavy thud echoes from the warehouse door, followed by the sound of boots, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Someone else is here, and they don't want Holmes getting any closer to the truth. The stakes are higher than ever, and the fog of London hides more than just secrets, it hides enemies. Stay tuned for Chapter 8, where Holmes confronts a dangerous adversary and uncovers a clue that brings them closer to the missing train. If you're caught in this web of mystery, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below with your theories about who's behind the Transatron. The warehouse on Cutler Street looms like a fortress in the fog, its air thick with the chemical tang of the Transatron's components, and the faint hum of its glowing panel. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade stand frozen as the heavy thud of boots echoes from the entrance, deliberate and growing closer. The blueprints and photograph Holmes collected showing Dr. Elias Morrow, with two stern-faced men, burn a hole in his pocket, each a piece of a puzzle that points to a conspiracy larger than a missing train. Watson's revolver is steady in his hand, his soldier's instincts sharpened by the sense of impending danger. Lestrade, his bravado faltering, clutches his truncheon, his eyes darting to the shadows where the mechanical sentinel vanished moments ago. Holmes, calm but alert, motions for them to move behind a stack of crates. "We're not alone," He whispers, his voice a blade cutting through the tension. "And whoever's coming doesn't want us here. The warehouse is a maze of crates and rusted machinery, its high ceiling lost in darkness." The glowing panel of the Transatron's smaller counterpart pulses faintly, casting eerie blue shadows that dance across the walls. Holmes's mind races, piecing together the clues, the Transatron's ability to displace objects, the investors mentioned in Morrow's letter, the symbol of a circle with radiating lines found at every site. The photograph suggests wealth and power, but the scuttling sentinel and the approaching boots hint at something more dangerous a force, willing to kill to protect its secrets. Watson peers through a gap in the crates, spotting 3 figures entering the warehouse, their silhouettes sharp against the dim light from the door. They're not police or dock workers. Their movements are too precise, their coats too fine. One carries a strange device, metallic and glinting, its shape unsettlingly familiar to the sentinels. Holmes signals for silence, his eyes locked on the intruders. The leader, a tall man with a hawkish face, scans the warehouse, his gaze lingering on the glowing panel. "Check the machine," he barks, his voice clipped and authoritative. "They've been here." His companions move swiftly, one inspecting the Transatron's components while the other sweeps the room, a pistol in hand. Watson's grip tightens on his revolver, but Holmes shakes his head slightly. "No shots, not yet." The leader kneels by the panel, muttering about calibration and the next phase. Holmes's eyes narrow. These men are no mere thugs. They're connected to Morrow's work, perhaps the investors themselves, or their agents. But why are they here, and what do they know about the train? The intruders' search brings them closer to the crates, and Watson's heart pounds as their lantern light creeps toward their hiding spot. Holmes, ever the strategist, picks up a small wrench from the floor and tosses it across the warehouse. It clatters against a metal drum, drawing the men's attention. "Over there," one shouts, and they move toward the sound, giving Holmes a chance to slip closer to the machine. He examines it quickly, his fingers tracing the conduits, noting a small, detachable module glowing brighter than the rest. "This is the key," he whispers to Watson, who's crept up beside him. "It's a power source, likely what makes the Transatron function." He pries it loose with a soft click, pocketing it just as the intruders turn back. The leader's eyes lock onto Holmes, and for a moment, the warehouse is silent. Then, with a snarl, the man draws a pistol, not a standard revolver, but something sleek and unfamiliar, its barrel glinting with an unnatural sheen. "You're meddling in things you don't understand," he says, his voice cold. Holmes steps forward, his demeanor calm but his eyes blazing. "I understand enough," he replies. "A train doesn't vanish without purpose. Where is it, and what is the Transatron's true function?" The man laughs, a harsh, humorless sound. "You think you can stop this? The train was just the beginning. The veil is opening, and no one, not even Sherlock Holmes, can close it." Before Watson can react, the man fires, the shot a strange, hissing sound rather than a bang. Holmes dives, pulling Watson behind a crate as the projectile strikes the wall, leaving a smoking, melted hole. Lestrade, panicking, charges the second man, swinging his truncheon, but the third intruder activates his device, a small, handheld machine that emits a piercing whine. The air shimmers and Lestrade stumbles, clutching his head as if struck. Watson fires his revolver, the shot echoing in the warehouse, grazing the leader's arm. The man curses, and the trio retreats, vanishing into the fog outside, but not before the leader shouts, "You'll find the train when it's too late." The warehouse falls silent, save for the hum of the Transatron's panel, now dimmer without its power module. Holmes rises, brushing dust from his coat, his expression unreadable, but his mind clearly racing. They're protecting something bigger than a single experiment, he says, holding up the stolen module. It's worn to the touch. It's surface-etched with the same circular symbol. Watson helps Lestrade to his feet. The inspector shaken but unharmed. What was that weapon? Watson asks, his voice unsteady. Holmes examines the melted hole in the wall, his fingers tracing its edges. Not a weapon of our time, he says. Morrow's technology or someone else's using his work. They search the warehouse for more clues, finding a hidden compartment. Beneath the machine, inside is a ledger, its pages listing shipments of rare metals, chemicals, and payments to unnamed parties. One entry stands out. Delivery to Blackheath Manor, 9:15 express for final calibration. Blackheath Manor, a secluded estate outside London, is owned by Lord Reginald Carver, a reclusive industrialist rumoured to dabble in experimental science. Could he be one of the investors? Holmes pockets the ledger, his eyes gleaming. We're getting closer, he says. The train was no accident. It was a test, and Blackheath Manor is our next stop. As they leave the warehouse, the fog seems thicker, the air heavier with menace. The strange weapon, the sentinels. The Transatron's power module their pieces of a puzzle. That points to a purpose beyond comprehension. What is the veil, and why did the train's disappearance matter so little to these men? Watson feels the weight of danger closing in, but Holmes is undeterred. His mind a steel trap locking onto the truth. The cab waits outside, its driver, oblivious to the battle that just unfolded. As they climb in, Holmes glances at the module in his hand. This, he says softly, could change everything or destroy it. The trail leads to Blackheath Manor, where the secrets of the Transatron and the missing train await. But the men they faced in the fog of London gives way to the rolling darkness of the countryside as Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade speed toward Blackheath Manor in their hansom cab. The stolen power module from the warehouse glowing faintly in Holmes's pocket. The ledger's cryptic entry, delivery to Blackheath Manor, 9:15 express. The final calibration burns in their minds, pointing to Lord Reginald Carver, a reclusive industrialist with a penchant for experimental science. The memory of the warehouse ambush lingers, the hawkish man with his strange, hissing weapon, the mechanical sentinels, and the chilling words about the veil opening. Watson's hand rests on his revolver, his nerves frayed by the mounting. Evidence of a conspiracy that defies logic. Lestrade, still shaken from the encounter, mutters about calling for reinforcements, but Holmes silences him with a glance. We're too close, Inspector, he says, his voice low and resolute. Whatever the Transatron is, its purpose lies at Blackheath, and so does the train. The manor looms into view as the cab crests a hill, its Gothic spires piercing the fog like skeletal fingers. Blackheath Manor is a hulking silhouette, its windows dark save for a single, flickering light in an upper tower. The grounds are overgrown, the iron gates rusted but imposing, as if guarding secrets too dangerous to escape. Holmes directs the driver to stop a distance away, and they approach on foot, their lanterns dimmed to avoid detection. The air carries that now familiar chemical tang, sharper here, mingled with the faint hum of machinery. Watson's heart pounds, the memory of the warehouse a scuttling sentinel fresh in his mind. This place feels wrong, he whispers, but Holmes is already moving, his eyes scanning the grounds for clues. A faint track, barely visible in the grass, leads from the gate to a side building, a coach house, its doors ajar, revealing the glint of metal inside. They slip into the coach house, finding not carriages but a makeshift laboratory, its walls lined with shelves of chemicals, blueprints and strange, glowing devices. In the center stands another piece of the Transatron, larger than the one in the warehouse but smaller than the quarry's colossal machine. Its conduits pulse with blue light, and the circular symbol lines radiating from a central point is etched into its base. Holmes examines it, his fingers tracing the same intricate patterns as the cogs and tube in his pocket. This is a relay, he says, his voice taut with realization. The Transatron isn't one machine, it's a network. This manor is a hub. Watson's mind reels. A network? To do what? Displaced trains or something more? Lestrade, rummaging through a desk, finds a stack of letters sealed with a cresta, Raven clutching a gear. One is addressed to Morrow, detailing payments for Project Veil. The phrase sends a chill through Watson. The Veil again. Holmes opens another letter, his eyes narrowing as he reads. The investors demand results. The train was a success. Proceed to phase 2. The signature is simply RC, Lord Reginald Carver. He's no mere investor, Holmes murmurs. He's the architect. Before they can search further, a soft click echoes from the shadows of door opening at the far end of the coach house. Holmes douses his lantern, and they crouch behind a workbench, the hum of the machine masking their breathing. A figure enters, tall and imposing, his face illuminated by a handheld lamp. It's Carver himself, his angular features stern, his eyes glinting with a mix of arrogance and unease. He's followed by 2 men, one the hawkish leader from the warehouse, his arm bandaged from Watson's shot. They move to the machine, adjusting its controls, speaking in low tones about stabilizing the field and preparing the next crossing. Holmes listens intently, his hand tightening around the power module. Watson catches fragments of their conversation, Morrow's mistake, too many passengers. The Veil isn't ready. The words confirm Holmes's theory the train's disappearance was no accident, but a test of the Transatron's power, a test that went wrong. Carver suddenly pauses, his head snapping toward their hiding spot. We're being watched, he says, his voice cold. The hawkish man draws his strange pistol, its barrel glinting, while the other activates a device that emits a low whine, like the one that disoriented Lestrade in the warehouse. Holmes acts swiftly, tossing a vial from the workbench into the machine's conduits. It shatters, sparking a burst of blue light that sends the men staggering. Now, Holmes shouts, and Watson fires his revolver into the air, the shot echoing. As they bolt for the door, the hawkish man fires back, the hissing projectile grazing Watson's coat, leaving a scorched tear. They tumble into the fog outside. The manor's grounds a maze of shadows. Holmes leads them to a low wall, where they catch their breath. They're protecting the Transatron at all costs, he says, his voice steady despite the chaos. The train was a trial run, but for what and where is it now? Watson, panting, recalls the photograph from the warehouse Morrow with 2 men, one likely Carver. The other's face nags at him, familiar but unplaceable. Lestrade, clutching a stolen letter, points out a detail, a map tucked inside, showing a remote site in the Scottish Highlands marked with the same circular symbol. The train. Holmes says, his eyes blazing. If it was displaced, it's there. And so is the final piece of the Transatron. They retreat to the cab, the manor's light fading behind them. The fog feels alive now, hiding enemies and secrets in equal measure. Carver's men are close, their strange weapons and sentinels a constant threat. Holmes examines the map, his mind racing. The Highlands, he says. That's where this ends. But we need to move quickly, Carver knows we're on. The train to the Scottish Highlands rattles through the night, carrying Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, and Inspector Lestrade toward the final piece of the puzzle that has haunted them since the 9:15. Express vanished. The map from Blackheath Manor, marked with the cryptic circular symbol, points to a remote glen near Lochmarr, a place so isolated it feels like the edge of the world. Holmes sits by the window, his sharp eyes fixed on the passing darkness. the stolen power module and Morrow's papers clutched tightly in his coat. The Transatron's purpose to cross the veil, and Lord Reginald Carver's role as its mastermind weigh heavily on his mind. Watson, his revolver cleaned and loaded, feels the tension of the chase. The memory of Carver's strange, hissing weapon, and the scuttling sentinels sharpening his senses. Lestrade, though still skeptical of the fantastical elements, grips the stolen letter from the warehouse, its mention of Project Veil, and the next crossing fueling his determination to see this through. The fog of London is far behind, but a new kind of darkness awaits one that holds the fate of the missing train and its passengers. They disembark at a desolate station under a sky heavy with clouds, the air crisp and biting. The glen is a half-day's trek, and they hire a cart to carry them through rugged terrain, the map guiding them to a narrow valley flanked by jagged cliffs. The chemical scent they've come to associate with the Transatron grows stronger as they approach, mingling with the earthy dampness of the Highlands. Holmes's lantern catches faint grooves in the ground tracks, not from wheels but from something mechanical, like the marks at Harrow's End and the quarry. "We're close," he says, his voice low but charged with anticipation. Watson's heart races, the weight of their discoveries pressing down. The Transatron's network, the investor's secrecy, the displaced train. What lies in this glen, and what does it mean to cross the veil? The valley opens into a clearing, and there, hidden by a copse of twisted pines, stands the final Transatron, a towering machine, larger than any they've seen, its conduits glowing with an intense blue light that pulses like a heartbeat. The circular symbol is carved into the ground before it, massive and precise, its grooves filled with that viscous lubricant. Scattered around are remnants of the 9:15 express, a carriage door, a shattered window, a passenger's valise, all scorched and twisted as if subjected to immense force. Watson's breath catches the train was here, but where is it now? Holmes kneels by the debris, his magnifying glass glinting as he examines a piece of metal etched with Morrow's patterns. The train was displaced, he says, his voice grim, but not destroyed. It's elsewhere. Before they can process the implications, a low hum erupts from the machine, and the air shimmers, rippling like water. From the shadows of the pines, figures emerge: Carver, the hawkish man from the warehouse, and a dozen armed men, their strange pistols gleaming. Behind them scuttle 3 sentinels, their lens-like eyes fixed on the trio. Carver steps forward, his face a mask of cold triumph. "You're persistent, Mr. Holmes," he says, his voice smooth but venomous. "But you're too late. The veil is open." He gestures to the Transatron, and the rippling air intensifies, revealing a faint, shimmering portal, a window to another place, where the outline of the missing train flickers like a mirage. Watson's mind reels. A portal. The Transatron doesn't just move objects, it sends them somewhere else, beyond the physical world. Holmes, unflinched, steps forward, the power module in his hand. "Where are the passengers, Carver?" he demands. "What is the veil?" Carver laughs, a chilling sound. "The veil is the barrier between our world and another dimension of limitless potential. The train was a test and it succeeded. The passengers are safe for now, but they're no longer here." He signals, and the sentinels advance, their mechanical legs clicking. Watson raises his revolver, but Holmes grabs his arm. "Not yet," he whispers, his eyes locked on the portal. Lestrade, emboldened, charges at one of the men, but a sentinel's whine disorients him, sending him sprawling. Holmes acts swiftly, hurling the power module into the Transatron's core. A burst of light erupts, the hum spiking into a deafening roar as the portal destabilizes, flickering wildly. Carver shouts in rage, firing his weapon, but Holmes dodges, pulling Watson behind a boulder. The machine sparks, its conduits overloading, and the portal begins to collapse, the train's outline fading. You've ruined everything. Carver snarls, but Holmes is already moving, grabbing a fallen sentinel and ripping out its core small, glowing device. This controls them, he says, pocketing it as the machine's hum falters. In the chaos, Carver and his men retreat, vanishing into the pines as the Transatron groans, its structure buckling. Watson fires after them, but the fog swallows their forms. The portal winks out, leaving only the wrecked machine and the scattered debris of the train. Holmes examines the sentinel's core. His face grim. The passengers are alive, he says, but trapped in that other dimension. We need to rebuild the Transatron to bring them back. Watson, panting, looks at the wreckage. Can we do it? Holmes's eyes burn with determination. We must. They gather what they can: blueprints, components, and the sentinels. Core knowing Carver is still out there, his plans for the Vale far from finished. The glen feels haunted now, the weight